right.
Hey everyone. How did you want to do this?
Um, I don't know. I guess. Well, why don't you order your cards? What I like to do is we're
Oh,
playing Uno, so I like to do by each suit so that they're in order. I give us 15. I don't remember what the actual rules are, but I figure we start there. Um, okay, so first card is five of hearts,
alright.
and
And so do I put down one or multiple?
just one. Okay, 10 of hearts. Okay, and the first book we're gonna be discussing is
Oh yeah, we're gonna do a book review.
yeah, we're okay. So last video we played chess, but Mom pointed out that like I was losing my train of thought while
I
we were
think we
playing
both
chess.
were. Mhm.
Yeah, and in fact you had to cut out like several minutes of dead air from it.
Oh yeah.
So anyway, we decided to play Uno because we thought that that would be a little bit easier. Like, there's not as much strategy involved, and but we still like the concept of like playing a game.
I
Um,
still need to be refreshed because it's been a while.
yeah. Well, anyway, so the first book that we're going to be talking about. By the way, the theme of this one is Juneteenth. So the first one is
Mhm.
Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, an American Slave.
And what can you tell us about it?
Um, okay. It is good. I enjoyed reading it, even some of the bits that were like, wow, that's messed up. Because there's a lot of those in there. But he's writing that in 1845, so slavery is still a thing when he's writing, and it won't end for another 20 years. He It was funny because like I thought it was like very straightforward how he was writing, and I didn't really think too much about what audience he was trying to reach. But I ended up watching a documentary today on Toni Morrison, who is an author we're going to talk about at the end.
We were talking earlier about that and how she wrote Jazz, which you just finished reading.
Yeah, that's one of the books I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to talk about too much plot since you want to read it, but well, I have three of her books that I want to talk about. But they mentioned in there actually the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, and they were saying you can kind of feel him holding back because he is writing to inform a black audience about the evils of slavery. Like he's writing for the white abolitionists, and like as a way of giving them something that they can disseminate amongst white people. Um,
Oh, real quick, do I just keep drawing until I find one that
yeah,
matches?
yeah. Um,
It's been a while.
um, so they specifically mentioned in the documentary how he doesn't address rape on the
Mm.
plantation, which is obviously like that was hugely rampant among slave women. Um, and I didn't. It took them talking about that for that to click for me. That like that is more like not wanting to offend white people's sensibilities at the time. Um, I gotta draw.
There
There
you
we
go.
go. Um, so yeah, I mean, I guess I didn't really like. I didn't think about that as I was reading it until they were talking about it in that context. Um, but it was a really powerful read. One of the things that I was thinking about as I was reading it was there's another book called Night, which is a survivor's account of the Holocaust, and it felt a lot like that. Um, he didn't go into like um, he mentions so like Frederick Douglass was half white and half black, and he mentions that he wasn't as abused as some of the other slaves, but he tells some stories up front of things that he witnessed, and oh my God, they're just horrific. And he talks about one incident in which they get a new overseer, and he and one of the slaves gets into an argument, and the man refused to stand down, so the overseer ended up shooting him to death. Um, and they were right near a river, and so the body fell into the river. And he describes how they were all able to see the body like floating downstream. Um, and he talks about seeing his aunt get whipped for the first time when he was 7. Um, then he ends up getting moved. Um, he goes to his owner's brother, I believe, in the
Mm-mm.
city, and oh,
Oh, finally.
so he kind of gets to see he gets to see two different sides of slave life on the plantation and in the country and then in the city. And he's able to compare the two, and he's just like, the city is so much better. And I think the reason is that if you own slaves in the city, all your neighbors are going to know how you treat them. And
Aha.
so he rarely had enough to eat in the country, but in the city he always had enough to eat because now it's a status thing. It's like your slaves need to eat well, um, and they give them clothes. In the country, they didn't get clothes. Well, they did. They got a certain set amount, but if they wore through them, you didn't get another one until the end of the year. And the children especially like would wear through them. So he was like, yeah. So you would see like barefoot, naked children all the time, and you don't see that in the city. Um, his so his master's wife in the city, she starts to teach him to read, which is illegal. And so when her husband finds out, he makes her stop. Um, but Douglas says that it's at that moment that he realizes that that's the key to um, becoming free, to escaping his situation, is learning how to read and educating himself in that way. Because he's like, if they don't want me to do that,
And how old is Frederick Douglass at this point?
um, I think he's I think he's a young teenager.
Okay.
I think he's like 15 or 16 at that point. The book covers like many many years, so he ends up going back and forth between the country and the city. Um, at one of the times when he goes back into the country, he tries to organize an escape, and he ends up forging documents for them to try and to claim that they have permission to go to Baltimore, and they get found out, and so one of the guys um, gets in a scuffle with the people who have come to take them, and they take their forged documents and they throw them in the fire really quick. So like, there's no evidence
Mm-hmm.
of what they were intending. Um, well, okay, so jumping back a little bit, he mentions that how he learned to read was he would make friends with white children, and then he
By
always
the
had
way,
a.
I think I lost because I've got nothing to cover there.
Um, okay, I don't know what we do because we went through the discard.
Yeah.
I'll just put down. Can you do something with that?
Yeah.
Go for it. Okay. Um, so the white boys often wouldn't have enough bread. Um, no, and so he would trade bread to like have them lend him lend them books. So all right, so we shuffle and do it again.
Yeah. I'll shuffle them. You
Okay.
go ahead.
So he would get the books from the white boys, and he would be able to read, and yeah, he just basically taught himself. Like once he had learned the basic letters, like his letters, he was able to figure out how to read from based on that. Um, he didn't. So he doesn't actually go into how he actually escaped. Remember, he's still writing this in 1845, and so when we get to the final chapter in the book, because the second to last chapter is all about the failed attempt. The last chapter in the book, he talks about that, but he basically starts off saying like,
15?
let's do 10 so that there's more in
Okay.
the pickup pile. He ends up saying like, I'm not going to really tell you how I escaped because this avenue is still open, and if I tell you about it, it closes. They're going to be watching that way. So I'm basically just leaving it at I escaped. I fled north, and I got here, and here I am. And then he kind of talks about he had learned Two of Hearts. He had learned a trade. It was like caulking on like ships.
Okay.
So like he knew how to do that, but the white people were not comfortable working with him because and so he ended up not being able to use that trade. He was kind of hoping that that would be how he would make his living. And then he went into there's like an addendum, I guess, or a sort of epilogue in which he kind of he says, yeah, I've been kind of like looking back over this, and I realize I have kind of like an anti. It appears that I have an anti-religion stance, and he's like, that's not quite accurate, and I wanted to expound upon that a bit more. And he basically like says, I believe in the teachings of Christ. I think that he has some wonderful things to say, but I abhor the hypocrisy of the American version of Christianity, in which they go and worship in church and say that they're good people, but then still continue to own slaves and profit from that labor. I was like, oh damn, like you preach, like Frederick Douglass, like this is that it was great. I was very happy. But yeah, I mean, I guess. Do you have any questions or anything? Because I don't think I have any more on that one.
Oh, none at the moment.
Okay.
Been a while since we've done a book review.
Yeah, it has. I was actually planning on doing some of these in
I feel like
film.
I should have had more questions planned ahead. Oh well.
Oh well.
Hmm.
I had actually planned on doing
But
some
it
of.
does sound like a very interesting story.
Well, it wasn't. It's very short. I haven't read any other slave narratives, and I imagine like none of them would be that long because you wouldn't. It's not something you would want to dwell on. But this one's less than 200 pages, um, and it's one that I kind of wish they had us read in class because it's so short. You could get through that. Well, okay, I took a couple days because I was like, damn. But did you put down or did I?
I don't remember.
I think I did.
Okay, then I go.
Okay, actually. Um. So then, the next book we're going to talk about is two books by Richard Wright. Um, this is an author that I got taught at Columbia. Um, we read one of his short stories in Uncle Tom's Children, and I read the rest of the collection, and I read Laud Today. Um, I actually got this one because I wanted to read Native Son, which we read an excerpt from as well, but I haven't read Native Son yet, so we're just going to talk about Laud Today and Uncle Tom's Children. And this is a really nice Library of America edition of his early works. Um, Laud Today is. Did you put that down?
Yeah.
Okay. Laud Today is his first novel, which wasn't published until I believe it was posthumous. It was definitely published much later than the other ones, and it's about a black postal worker in Chicago, um, and it's just a day in his life. We follow him from when he wakes up until when he is knocked unconscious in his bedroom. Um, and then Uncle Tom's Children is a collection of stories about the Jim Crow South. And they all have to do with basically black people being in terror of white people.
What era does this take place in?
I believe the book was published in the 40s, so probably would have been like the 30s.
Okay.
It was 5 stories. I read that. I read the collection back in February, so let me actually look and see if I can remember all the stories in it.
Finally.
Yeah. Okay. So he starts it off with an essay entitled "The Ethics of Jim Crow," which is basically about his own experiences in living in the Jim Crow South because he grew up there and then he ended up moving to Chicago. So I don't know how much of it is autobiographical, but obviously he knows the environments enough to accurately portray them. Um, so then um, the first story is Big Boy Leaves Home, which is the one we read for class. But I had kind of forgotten it until I read it again. And basically, this group of boys go to. Well, they're teens. They go to this swimming hole, and they're a little worried about going to it because it's right on the border of this white farmer's land, and he's fucking nuts. And so they're like, hopefully, like he doesn't see us going there, because like that it'll be a problem if he does.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's really hot. We want to go to the swimming pool, and so they end up getting there without issue, and they end up going skinny dipping, and then the farmer's wife catches them, and she's screaming, and so they're going. They want to leave, but she is standing between them and their clothes.
Mm.
So one of them ends up having to,
Awkward.
you know, one of them ends up like walking towards her. Um, and so she freaks out even more. And here we go. Okay. So she freaks out even more, and there ends up being a scuffle. The farmer comes out with a gun, and one of the boys is shot, and then the farmer dies. So now they come home, and they tell their parents what happened, and they're like, "Okay, well, we need to get you out of here because otherwise you're going to be lynched."
Mm-hmm.
Um, so there's at least two boys who have survived the encounter at the swimming hole, and so we follow Big Boy as he hides, um, waiting for his ride out of town, and the lynch mob comes in with his friend, and he's able to see. I don't remember exactly what he's in, but he's inside of a thing. Oh, I can't put down. I'm yeah,
All right.
still can't. I can put down. And he's able to see them bring his friend, and on the way to kill him. So Big Boy gets out, but none of the other boys make it. Uno again.
Uno.
Okay, I can't put down. Can you?
I cannot.
Okay, well I guess that was a tie then. um, and honestly, like all the stories are kind of like that. One of them was about they're trying to stage a protest, and they have to convince the local preacher who's been kind of he's had a policy of like appeasement with the local white people, and they have
What does that mean?
he's been basically caving into whatever they want,
Okay.
and so they don't want the black people to protest, and he initially doesn't think that they should, and so he's trying to talk everybody else in the town out of doing this protest. And then at the end, we realize like they end up he ends up being convinced, and I don't remember. I think somebody tries to kill him, because it's a Richard Wright story, but he ends up changing his mind, and then once they actually do protest, they get what they need, and so it's kind of like just it's a story about collective action, and that was I think the only one of the five that had a happy ending. Like all the other ones were none of them were happy. But they were very good. Another thing about them that I really enjoyed, and both of Richard Wright's works that we're going to talk about, he used a lot of dialect. But he does it really well. So right before I read Uncle Tom's Children, I decided to reread some Poe stories, and I ended up reading one called The Gold Bug. Um, and I had forgotten that there is either a slave or a servant character. I guess it's probably a slave, but they don't really specify. Who's clearly black, and he is given just the worst dialect. Like, oh my god, it's so cringy. Um,
Like how cringy?
uh, I I could probably go grab it, but like it's just super racist. It's really bad.
I can imagine.
Um, but then reading Richard Wright, he does almost the same things, but it feels so authentic and real. And so it was just really interesting, like going back, like having read those back to back and seeing how Richard Wright was able to use dialect authentically, and how Poe it just has aged very poorly. Um, but also that Poe story is like not good. It's just not a good one.
Was that the last one, or was there another story in there?
Um, I think I was going to switch to Laud Today, the novel. Um, damn, I cannot. There we go. Okay. Um, so the protagonist of Laud Today, he's a piece of shit. Um, I mean, like,
Oh no, tell me how you really feel.
well, okay, so like the book starts and like he wakes up and he hears his wife making. Did you put down her?
Yeah.
Okay, and he hears his wife making breakfast, and he gets up and like starts looking for an excuse to beat her, and then beats her. Um, and I think the excuse was something really stupid. I think he gets mad about like two or three different things beforehand, and then I think the thing that he ends up settling on is that she moved something of his, which she actually didn't, and he even knows. He realizes like in the middle of blaming her that he was the one who moved it, but he continues to blame her, and then he like beats her, and he ends up leaving and going to go like to work. So he works at the post office, sorting mail, and before his day is gonna start, he basically hangs out and plays cards and gambles with his friends. Um, It's interesting too, because like they spend a long, like that's like a full like chapter is him just like hanging out with the friends playing cards, and he describes like all of the hands. Um, so it really puts you like in that place. Um, then he goes to the post office, and he gets forewarned that he is going to be called in on disciplinary charges because his wife has gone to them and told them that he beat her, and so they're going to fire him. But he calls his buddy, who's like a higher up at the post office, and says, "Hey, can you put in a call on my behalf so that I'm not fired?"
Hmm.
And he's called into the disciplinary hearing, and the call hasn't come in yet, and it ends up coming in while he's there, and so he's let off with a warning. And he's really mad about her having told on him, um, because from his logic is like, well, if I get fired, I can't pay for her operation. I can't put down.
All right.
She's very sick. Um, and we come to find out later in the book that she is sick because he um, started having sex with her, but like didn't really care about her, and he ended up getting her pregnant. And so then he took her to get an abortion, which was illegal at the time. And so they went to like, an unlicensed doctor to do it,
Mm-hmm.
and there were complications, and so she's been sick ever since from the botched abortion.
Mm.
And so he's like, well, like I need the job to pay for her operation, and how am I going to make that money if I don't have a job with her telling on me for beating her?
Mm.
So like he just feels trapped in this situation where he can't make any money, any real money. Um, he's with a woman that he doesn't love, and
I have
there's
nothing to put down.
I don't know. I can put down.
Still can.
Yeah. Um, can you?
No. So go ahead. You were saying.
Um, so anyway, at the end of the novel, he gets really drunk and comes home at like 2 a.m. and he's gonna beat her again, and they get into like a ferocious fight, and she smashes him over the head, and he falls unconscious on the floor,
Mm.
and he's broken a window. So he like Richard Wright describes like the wind coming in from outside, and that's where the book ends.
Mm.
Yeah, it was messed up. I mean, like I do have like sympathy for him because of the situation that he's in and he's put himself in, and but like oh my god, he just the scenes of him beating her are like so like oh my
Graphic.
god, yeah, like that just happened. Holy. um, so yeah, I mean, but like it is interesting because it's from his point of view. So like while you're reading it, you almost are like, okay, I guess I understand why. But then, like, when you pull back a bit, you're like, okay, that's just like that you're just telling yourself that. Like, that's not justifiable. Um, but yeah, I really liked the style. Like, I liked the style of all of these. He uses dialect quite a bit, but he also it's very quick and easy to read. Um, it's a very brisk. Both are very brisk reads. Um, so at some point I'll read Native Son. And I'll probably add that to a follow up because Native Son is. I don't know if it's his most famous book, but it's one of the more famous ones. Laud
Mm.
Today. Laud Today wasn't published in his lifetime, so I mean, like, I think it's more considered for like, oh, you're a fan of Richard Wright, you should read this book that he wrote before any of his published stuff. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, I enjoyed both of them. I think they were very good. They were very upsetting. I mean, almost all of the books in here were upsetting, but yeah.
Oh, is that something you would read again?
Um, I don't know. I mean, like, there really wasn't a lot going on in Laud Today. I'd probably read Uncle Tom's Children again. Laud Today for me was it was good. I think he did a good job. It's just it more has to do with it's very much just a slice of life sort of thing,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not naturally drawn to that. I I'm glad I read it the one time, but I'm not sure that I'll go back and reread it. Um, yeah.
All right. Sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
I got nothing to put down.
Got nothing. I don't think I can put down anything either. Okay. You put down.
New game.
Okay, yeah, that
Or,
works too.
or wait, I do what now?
I was thinking you would put down, but we can just do a new game.
Okay.
Which one?
Well, let's just see.
Okay. I can't put down. You can't put down? Okay.
No. New game.
Let's do a new game. Okay.
What do we have next?
Well, now we have 3 books by Toni Morrison. The Bluest Eye, Beloved, and Jazz. Toni Morrison is a more contemporary writer.
How contemporary are we talking?
She died in 2019. Although her first novel was, I believe, 1970. The Bluest Eye is her first novel. Yes, 1970. So, I guess you would consider, like, Stephen King might be a good equivalent. She didn't write as many books. But she was writing from around that same time period to, when she died. But she was a little older when she started writing. She worked as a teacher and an editor, and I watched the documentary on her today, and so I got to actually see her for the first time. Like they did interviews with her, and she said she didn't really consider herself a writer until she had published several books, and then she was like, I guess, yeah, I guess I'm an author, like, first, like she always considered she considered herself an editor and a teacher before she considered herself a writer. But she ended up winning the Nobel Prize for literature, right after Jazz. Actually, Jazz was the last novel she wrote before she received the Nobel Peace Prize. And they showed video. I think she was getting a medal from President Obama. So I'm assuming she was named Poet Laureate, but I'm not like 100%. I should have looked that up before we started.
Oh well.
Yeah. She has a very interesting style of writing. It's almost like poetry. I don't know how else to describe it because she just flows. And normally when I say that, I would mean that the book just flies by. But she was easily the hardest to read of
Why is that?
these 3. She shifts gears a really lot. So she'll switch characters in the middle of a chapter. She does a lot of like different stuff like that, and then like her style is very poetic, and it's beautiful to read. It is, but like poetry is a little harder than prose to read, at least for me. So even though like her style wasn't the easiest, I really did enjoy them. And I had to keep going. I had to go back sometimes and like reread passages to see if I understood what was going on, because the plots are very simple, deceptively simple, but the inner lives of the characters are very complex. So her first novel is The Bluest Eye, and it came out in 1970. It follows a group of young black girls and is an examination of ingrained self-hatred of black people who decide that they won't, like, who feel that they're not beautiful because they're not white.
Mm-hmm.
So I suppose Pecola is the main character, even though she's not the narrator. Um, she wants to be white like a Barbie doll. And she wants blue eyes because then she thinks that she'll be beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And she is being molested by her father, um, and becomes pregnant with his child. And so the novel starts. Actually, why don't I just read that passage because she does it so well. Not that part. Quiet as it's kept, there were no marigolds in the fall of 1941. We thought at the time that it was because Pecola was having her father's baby that the marigolds did not grow. A little examination, much less melancholy, would have proved to us that our seeds were not the only ones that did not sprout. Nobody's did. Not even the gardens fronting the lake showed marigolds that year. But so deeply concerned were we with the health and safe delivery of Pecola's baby, we could think of nothing but our own magic. If we planted the seeds and said the right words over them, they would blossom, and everything would be all right. Um, so she also moves around in time, and so like that's the start of the book. Like they already know what's happening,
Mm-hmm.
but we kind of jump back in time to them, to before they know, to when there are just hints of what's going on. Um, and she switches point of view between the girls, but also to her father, and we follow like his journey and how he got to like how he ended up raping her, and you actually feel sympathy for him too, which is definitely something you wouldn't expect. I mean, like it's still messed up, like really, really messed up, but you understand why it happened. It's it's definitely a tragedy. Um, it is sort of. They were talking about it. They were talking about her work in that documentary, and they were saying how she kind of wrote like Shakespeare, but whereas Shakespeare took as his subject important people like kings and queens and noble figures, she took common people who um, have like these extraordinary, terrible circumstances that lead to horrific tragedies, and yeah, I mean like so. The Bluest Eye is probably the like most upsetting of the three. Um, Mostly just because of the premise and that first line. Um, it might also be her best. I don't know. Like I've read that one twice. We also read that one for class. Um, and I definitely didn't appreciate it the first time I read it. But a friend said that that was her favorite book, so I decided to reread it. And I was
Okay.
like, no, this is really good. So then I decided to read more of Toni Morrison's books. Um, so the next one I chose was Beloved, which, funnily enough, along with Jazz, apparent, and then another book that I got, Paradise, apparently makes up a an unofficial trilogy of Black lives from the end of slavery across a century. Um, and I didn't realize that they considered that a thing. I
Hmm.
probably would have read that one before, but and like talked about it here, but we'll go back to it at some point. So Beloved takes place in the first few years after slavery. Um, our Did you put down?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Um, our main character is she's based on a real woman who the slave catchers came for her and her children, and I can't put down. Okay, uno. I can't put down. Yay.
Yay.
The slave catchers come for her and her children, and so she decides to kill the children so that they won't return to slavery, and she tries to kill herself. This is the true story is she slashed the one older child's throat, and then on the way back she tried to drown herself and her baby, and she killed the baby, but they brought her back.
My goodness.
And so Toni Morrison was said in there, she was like, I only read that newspaper clipping telling that part of the story. I didn't do any more research because I didn't want to tell her story. I wanted to tell the story of someone like her. What is the main character's name? Because I'd rather... Seth. Yes, okay. So Seth is placed into a similar situation. She has gotten herself out, but these slave catchers consider her children not free, so they come to take them back. So she takes her children into the shed and kills all but one of them. So we do flash back and we do see that scene, but that's about halfway through the book. Sorry.
Okay.
The book starts out, she's alone with the daughter. The grandma has she was living with her mother when the slave catchers came, but her mother has since wasted away. So it's just her and the daughter, but the house is haunted by the ghost of one of the children, of the baby that she killed. And they can hear it weeping in the night. And so when one of the friends of her husband comes, he shouts at the baby ghost and tells it to leave, and the crying stops. And the two of them start up a relationship because it doesn't seem like the husband is coming back. They think he's probably dead. And so the three of them end up going to like this nice fair day together. And when they come back, there's this strange woman sitting near the house. She seems very new. Like she doesn't have any calluses on her feet or her hands. Like she's all very soft. She's fully clothed.
What do you mean very new?
Like I said, she doesn't have any calluses. She's very smooth. That's kind of just how they describe her. Like she seems very innocent. Did you put down?
Hold on.
Bless you.
Okay.
So we quickly come to realize that she is the spirit of the baby come to Earth.
My turn?
Yeah. Because she says her name is Beloved, which is the name that they put on the baby's grave. I can't put down Uno. And the people of the town have been kind of leaving. They've been kind of like keeping Seth at arm's length. They don't really want to have anything to do with her after she killed the babies. And as time goes on, the Beloved gets gets her husband's friend to leave, and she starts kind of like eating Beloved, like just stealing her life energy. And so the daughter starts going to work in order to, have food for them. And eventually the townsfolk like start realizing how bad the situation has gotten, and that this like weird that this weird like metaphysical thing has happened. And so they end up coming to intervene.
Oh no.
And I can't put down. And Beloved is banished. And it is, pretty like kind of a happy ending, because like they're sort of welcomed back as members of the community. So that one was pretty, like it definitely had some upsetting moments, but it was sort of uplifting too. That one might be my favorite of the three. I go back and forth between that one and The Bluest Eye. All right, well, let's talk about jazz.
All right.
So, it is set in Harlem in the 1910s. But honestly, other than that, it doesn't really have like much to do with like jazz itself. I think it more has to do with kind of the way she has written the book. Because like all the things that I mentioned, where she switches characters, she goes backwards and forwards in time.
Uno.
Oh, cool. All right. Last one.
Alrighty.
Okay. All of that is like ramped up in jazz. That one was the one that I got lost the most in. It had to backtrack.
Mm-hmm. I remember you telling me about that.
Yeah.
A previous time.
Yeah. I mean, they're all very good. Like I really enjoy her style and how she writes them. So the book both starts and ends with a murder. The same murder. So the book starts in the aftermath of the murder. Violet and her husband So Violet's husband was cheating on her with a younger woman,
Hmm.
and he ended up shooting the younger woman, and she died. So Violet goes to her funeral and cuts her corpse.
Oh boy.
And then she starts chilling with the other woman's mom. And they kind of hang out and they like develop a bond. It's really interesting.
Sounds like it.
Well, Violet's a real interesting character. I don't really know how to feel about her. Even having finished the book, I'm like, you were a very odd person. But we get inside her head. We get inside the mom's head. We get inside the husband's head. And I think her name was Dorcas. No, doesn't matter. The friend of the other woman. We get inside her head, and so we kind of get like an all-around picture of what happened. That, yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure I didn't accidentally switch the suit.
Uh-huh. Hmm. Oh no.
Uno, dos, tres. I don't know. That one's still the freshest too. So like, I don't know how I feel about it. It was good. They were all good.
Glad you liked them. I'm out.
Okay. Well, that seems as good a place to end it as any.
Alrighty then.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for giving the feedback on your books.
Well, thank you for having me and for filming
I do what I can.
it.
All right. See you later.
Bye.